Today's program is part of the award-winning series Profiles in Literature, featuring interviews with persons prominent in American literature for children. The moderator of this series is Dr. Jaqueline Shachter Weiss.
Profiles in Literature says, "Welcome to Philadelphia," to two super-achieving ex-Philadelphians. Prize-winning illustrator Jerry Pinkney, what did you study at our Dobbins High School?
I studied commercial art there.
And your lovely wife and writer, Gloria Pinkney. Where did you meet your husband there?
Well, I met him at Dobbins Vocational School at a Valentine's dance.
Oh, and they were married a few years later. They've worked hard and have achieved this beautiful home. We'll see a picture of the entrance and now one of the side view. Gloria Jean, in what town is it?
Croton-on-the-Hudson, New York.
Where is your studio, Jerry?
My studio is on the lower level with a view of the woods.
Oh, That's exciting. Before this lovely home came the hard years. You still work long hours. What happened, Jerry, when you left Dobbins High School and applied for a college scholarship at Philadelphia Museum School of Art?
Well, I did receive a 4-year scholarship there, but prior to that, it was thought that there really wasn't a position or the opportunity for African Americans to actually go in the field of art. But I applied and did receive that scholarship.
The irony is that you, almost denied college,
That's true.
have since taught in institutions of higher learning. You've taught art at Pratt Institute, at the University of Delaware, and State University of New York at Buffalo,
Correct,
among
yes.
other places. What inspired you to believe that an African American could succeed?
I think that in the very beginning, I certainly had a lot of encouragement from home, of course, but I believed that I could, even without role models at that time. I thought that I could, and I think with that belief, and certainly being the opportunity given to me by very supportive people, I was able to accept that challenge.
Well, you certainly have succeeded. Among other prizes, you've won 3 Caldecott Honor Medals, 3 Coretta Scott King Awards.
4 Coretta Scott King Awards.
4
Yes,
Coretta Scott
yes,
King Awards, my goodness. 4 Society of Illustrators medals, and a citation from Drexel University in the Free Library of
That's
Philadelphia.
correct.
How many books have you illustrated?
Over 80 for children, and also around 12 illustrated novels for adults.
Oh, that's tremendous. In 1988, you won a Caldecott Honor Medal for illustrating Patricia C. McKissick's Mirandy and the Wind, published by Knopf. What media did you use?
Those paintings are done in pencil watercolor on paper.
Oh, I love them. In 1989, you again won a Caldecott Honor Medal for illustrating The Talking Eggs by Robert D. Sansucci. Unless otherwise specified, the publisher of books shown today is Dial. Please tell us something. My pupils loved the picture of the old woman almost removing her head. What's a brief story behind this?
Oh, that's a classic story. I had needed to do a colored sketch for the publisher, for the art director to decide the typeface, and so that I did not have a model at that time. And Gloria actually posed for the old lady, and I turned her into an older woman. And then Gloria, then after that piece was finished, Gloria then went out and found a model that looked just like the drawing. And that's one of Gloria's, I think one of the magical things she's done in my career is being able to find the right model for a given character, yes.
That's splendid. In 1994, your liquid impressionistic watercolors for Julius Lester's John Henry brought you your third Caldecott Honor Medal. Among Lester's other works, you've illustrated his prize-winning the 4 volumes.
4 volumes,
of
yes.
The Story of Uncle Remus. Why do you work on more than one book at a time?
Well, there's a very good reason for that. I work on one book in different stages. For instance, I may be doing a dummy book for one project while researching another. So it allows me also to get a little distance between the project that I'm working on the board, so that I keep juggling these 3 books and until the point where I get to the finished art. And then at that point, I will just work on one book.
I see. You are really a workaholic, you know that.
Yes, I do.
Yes. You honored Harriet Tubman with the first postage stamp in the Black Heritage series of the U.S. Postal Service. Then, when Alan Schroeder wrote Minty, you illustrated the story of Tubman's childhood after you did paintings for what national monument?
For the Booker T. Washington National Monument.
You are just so versatile. We're going to show a photograph with members of your family who are in the arts. Please identify them from left to right, or as you will, and tell us in what art form you encourage them.
Well, there's Miles on the left, and he's a photographer. There's Gloria Jean in the center, a writer who, of course, we've collaborated on 2 books and many other things. Then you have Andrea, who is a senior editor at Simon & Schuster and a writer. And there's top right, you have Brian, of course, and with his 22 or so books, and writes as well as illustrates, of course. And
You're
top,
on the left.
I'm on the top right, or center, top
No,
center.
left, I think we have. Oh, yes, center, you're right.
Yes.
You're correct. You have 4 grown children and 7 grandchildren to date. One of the newest books is It's Raining Laughter. It's the only book in which Miles Pinkney is the photographer. Nicky Grimes wrote the poetry for that book. Miles is in television production, and he has his own photography business.
Correct, yes.
Miles is your youngest, and Brian is second to the oldest. Brian got his master's in the fine arts at the New York School of Visual Arts.
Yes.
In 1995, he did the illustrations for The Faithful Friend by Robert D. Sanssouci and won a Caldecott Honor Medal and a Coretta Scott King Honor Medal. That's tremendous. Brian uses a scratchboard technique. He covers whiteboard with black ink with a special tool. He scrapes away the ink, sculpting as he draws. He colors the scratches with oil pastels. Brian has often illustrated books by his wife, Andrea Davis Pinkney. She is a Syracuse University journalism graduate and now an editor. We'll show 2 books by Harcourt Brace that picture this team. One is Dear Benjamin Banneker, and the second is Bill Pickett, Rodeo Riding Cowboy. It's the story of an African-American Texas cowboy billed as the dusky demon in international rodeos. Andrea dedicates this book to Gloria Jean and you, Jerry. Gloria Jean, we're going to turn to you for a minute. But before we do, I don't want to forget, Jerry, I said that one of the latest books is It's Raining Laughter, but don't you have a book coming out?
Yes, in September, Rikki Tikki Tavi, and it's Rudyard Kipling's story about the mongoose.
So you adapted it as well as illustrated?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Now I can focus on Gloria Jean. Gloria Jean, what is this little house behind your big house?
That is my studio, Sunflower.
Oh, you call it
Sunflower?
Oh,
yes.
Sunflower. I see. You once had a millinery silversmith business.
Yes, I did.
I want to know how that led to your writing career.
How did that lead to my writing? That's a very good question. When our first granddaughter was born, she was a very funny character, and she still is. And I decided, after being, after years of Jerry saying to me, Gloria, you should write because I can tell a good story. Well, when our first granddaughter was born, she was so funny in the hat shop that I decided I would try to write about her. And I did, and I sent a manuscript in, and the editor's at Dial, Phyllis Fogelman, said to me, Gloria, you write beautifully, and we're not going to reject this manuscript, just put it away. We want you to find your writing voice. And then I went in search of my writing voice. I found it in Lumberton, North Carolina.
Yes, in the book Back Home. I love your nostalgic style.
Oh, thank you.
And what prompted that book?
What prompted that book? The moment I arrived in North Carolina, I went by train. My uncle met me at the station. And I had in mind that I was looking for this writing voice. And the moment he opened his mouth and he spoke to me, it just rekindled all kinds of memories of hearing that voice in Philadelphia growing up in my great-aunt's rooming house, who was from North Carolina.
I see. I see. So plenty of characters in a rooming house. My goodness. And your prequel to Back Home
The Sunday Outing.
Sunday Outing.
Yes.
Its topic now?
Its topic, it's about a little girl, the same little girl, Ernestine, which I dedicated both books to my mother, who died when I was 8. And my great-aunt, who had the rooming house, was my guardian. And she used to take me up to North Philadelphia Station to watch the trains pass through.
Gloria Jean, it's really. I want to know, how do you help Jerry in his work?
Well, whenever Jerry gets a manuscript, he then will talk to me about the character that he's looking for. And then I go out looking at people. I study people. That's just a habit of mine. And I look for a person, that person that Jerry describes to me. I'll go out in search of that person.
Physical look as well as personality.
Yes, physical as well as personality.
And so you hire models.
I hire the models, and then I dress them. I do the costuming and prepare them, to work for Jerry. And we really have what we call a model shoot, where we have we read the manuscript to them and have the models act out the characters in the story.
Oh, how
And then
fun.
Jerry takes Polaroids.
I see. Well, I just think that this is very clever to have Polaroids that you can paint by at any hour of the night, and as you once pointed out to me, children can't always pose, so you have them in your studio at an earlier time.
Correct, yes. And also to keep a continuity in character through 32 or 40 pages, you would need to have photographs.
Well, I've heard of other people doing that when they go out to shoot wildlife and come back to their studio to paint, but rich characterizations are one of the features.
Yes, especially I use expressions are very much part of a major role in my work, so that would make it necessary to have people respond.
Yeah. There's another reason also, with the costuming, Jerry can see the folds and the clothing, and
sure, the lights
those things
and
are
shadows.
a help, in his illustrations.
The more information I have, the more inventive I can become.
I see. I see. I want to go back to you now, Gloria Jean. I understand you're writing a chapter book.
Yes, I'm writing a chapter book. It's also about Ernestine. And I'm trying now in this third book, both The Sunday Out and Back Home, I have fact and fiction in those stories. In this particular story, I'm trying to work closer to the actual things that happened. And there were some very painful things that happened at that time. When, as I told you, my mom died when I was 8 years old. So I'm trying to write closer to the real actual events. And that's what I'm working on at this time. And it's a very difficult problem.
Oh, of course. Can you reveal its working title?
Right now, the working title is Best Street in the World. And that is the street that we had to leave after my mom died. And we changed neighborhoods. So, of course, that was another loss.
When did you first become interested in writing?
Really, right after my granddaughter was born, which was around
when she was at the millennium.
Yes, 1991, yes.
And what was that the first writing project, writing about her?
No. How about you?
Yeah, Gloria has worked with me on other projects. We did a series of Black History calendars, which Gloria researched and wrote the legends.
Oh.
And that was in
70s, yeah, 74, 75.
That's right.
So you've had a number of writing projects.
Yes.
I see. They weren't all book form.
No,
No,
they were not.
no.
And what goals have you set for yourself, Gloria?
Oh, that's a very good question. My goal, I really like writing good stories about good things. It's very important to me. You know, right now, it's a time where there are a lot of negative things for children to see all the time. So I feel that it's very important to know about some good things, again, and hopeful things. You know, it was a painful time for me, but I survived it, and I was all right. And it's important for me to write about that.
I see. I see. Jerry, why did you especially enjoy illustrating Valerie Flournoy's The Patchwork Quilt?
Oh, it was a wonderful experience illustrating that book because of the text and the warmth of the text, and also the challenge of me to, for my art to blend well with such a soft, warm story. And so I think that really was one of the most extraordinary stories for me because of the way because of the text and because of my challenge to create art that went so well with that text.
And also, you had an African-American family.
I think so. Yeah, that was certainly important at that, especially at that
time.
Very much so. It was one of the first stories like that for me, and certainly that was part of the challenge. Also, family is very important to us. So that part of the energy and the electricity in Patchwork is it's about love and family that we have in our own family.
Yes, it is. I want to show your 1994 Children's Book Week poster.
Oh.
I love it. And I'd like to ask you if you've done any paintings for NASA.
Yes, I did. In 1983, I was part of the NASA art team for the Space Shuttle Columbia.
Oh, really?
And I did a number of small some drawings and then a large drawing which is hanging at the Air and Space Museum in Cape Kennedy.
Oh,
that was
Florida?
truly an extraordinary experience.
In Florida?
In Florida, yes, yes.
Oh.
The launch was it was extraordinary to be there.
I would like to also ask Gloria to tell us about Sparrow Boy, Brian Pinkney's latest
Most
book.
recent work. Well, it's written by Brian.
Oh,
yes, and it's
he
about
did both the art and
yes, and he's again based this on a life experience, part of it. He also combined fact and fiction. He used to be a paper boy himself, and that inspired him to write this story about a little boy who's on a bike, and there's an injured sparrow in the road, and he puts on his brakes and to keep from harming the sparrow, and then he's airborne, and he becomes a superhero.
Oh.
And it's done in sort of a comic book style, but using the scratchboard.
It should be very popular.
I think
is.
so.
It just won the Boston Globe Horn Book Award.
It did?
Yes,
It
for
did.
this year.
And it just also was written up at the New York Times this past Sunday.
Well, too much talent. Do you plan, Jerry, to collaborate further with Robert D. Sansucci on some African-American folktales?
Yeah, there's some thoughts on that. I think that we've worked very well together, and I know Bob well, and so that there is that possibility of finding that right story where we would be a perfect fit for each other.
And Jerry also has his most recent book where he's working on another book with Julius Lester
Yes.
Oh.
that he's working on right now.
Oh, really? What's it called?
It's called Black Cowboy Wild Horses, A True Story. A story of Bob Lemon, a black cowboy.
Oh, that should be popular.
Yes, I would think so.
The painting's already beautiful. It is a spectacular work.
Isn't that amazing? With what media did you do?
It, again, pencil, watercolor on paper. I think when it's finished, because I'm in the process now of working on them, they really will be mixed media with gouache and pastel and colored pencils also.
Do you often travel to do research as you did in Louisiana for fence designs so you could have authenticity?
Yes, of course, research plays a large role in my work. And in the case of Minty, I had finished the Booker T. Washington paintings for that national monument. And I spent 3 days on a plantation there. So I was able to use that research and that energy from that one project into Minty. And as I said before, yes, research is a very important part of my work, and authenticity is foremost.
Because you work on getting the proper costumes, the proper
Staging,
proper
yes,
dress.
right. I want to convince you that actually this story, even if it's a folk tale, that it's real, that
And you
can
also
get
want-
inside of that story.
Excuse me, and you also want the reader to feel as if they're really there.
Sure. So staging and costume and research is...
And fence designs, my goodness.
Oh, it's
such
magic.
a small thing, but it must lend credibility.
Oh, for sure, exactly. And I love the idea of doing research, and I've surrounded myself now with people who are been very, very helpful in my work.
I see. Well, Gloria has done some research for you.
Yes,
too.
she
I know
has.
she
Yes.
has.
Yes.
It's been like a right hand. How did your former professor, Sam Mayton, help you?
Oh, that was exciting. I had left the Philadelphia Museum School of Art, and I was working actually in a flower store here in Philadelphia. And he remembered me, and evidently thought of me as a very good student, and knew about the fact that I was not working in the arts. And he had a friend in Boston, Tom Broman, who he recommended that I go up and visit, and I did, showed a portfolio, and was accepted, and I worked for Ruscraft for 2 years.
May I also add something here, that Jerry was a design student, not an illustration student.
At Philadelphia
Yes,
And he
right.
put together a portfolio over a weekend and boarded the bus and went to Boston with his portfolio and got that first job, which really changed our whole lives.
Well, my passion was always drawing and painting and printmaking.
It's interesting you had to make compromises in how you made a living.
Oh, for sure, yes. But I think that all supports what I do now.
Oh,
it was great
absolutely.
discipline, and I was able to certainly understand things that had to be done, and also the things that I needed to do, the creative things.
What always amazes me is how you nurtured your family. For example, what did you do to encourage Brian's early interest in art?
Oh, what we did as when they were children, we always had a workroom for them.
All four.
And all four.
All four?
And we would just, in that workroom, there would be work tables, and we supplied them with materials. And that was the key to it all, that they had to have creative freedom.
But Brian is, he's just so lucky because you have guided him in many ways, even into use of the camera for models.
Yes.
You know, I think you both have shown excellent parenting skills.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we wanted our children to be happy in whatever they chose for their careers.
That's true.
And you mentioned Scott, your
Yes.
other son. What
Scott
is
is our
his
middle
field?
child. He's a designer,
Oh.
and he lives in Toronto, and he has his own design studio.
Oh, look at that.
Creative director as well as vice president.
Isn't that amazing? So this is an artistic line also.
Yes, and Troy, our daughter.
Daughter.
What does she do?
She's the director of Child Life,
at Jacobi Hospital in New York City, and she uses art for healing.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned this. So all four of your children are stellar. How did your parents, Jerry, feel about you entering art as a career?
My mother was very encouraging and always said to me that I should be able to pursue whatever I chose to. My father was a little skeptical, but he had certainly the right to be at that time. There were very few African American artists, and so he thought that perhaps that decision was not the wisest at that time, but he had no idea of the potential of the field or my potential. But he also found ways for me to go to a Saturday art class or an art class after school. So he had mixed feelings, but he was also very instrumental in getting me into art classes very early.
Well, you've taken advantage of the opportunities that were here in Philadelphia. Do you have anything you want to comment on now, Gloria Jean, since I've been pressing us to have broad coverage?
Well, the only thing that I would add is that Jerry is such a hard worker, and he's had to work very hard, and he's never been afraid of taking risks. And that, I think, has really made the difference in
Patience.
Yes, and making him successful as an artist. And I, as his wife, have always been very supportive. I've always been really involved with his work, and that has helped both of us. Certainly, I'm fortunate that I am also creative.
Yes.
You know, that has been a plus.
But you have been a partners.
Oh, for sure.
Partnership
Yeah.
throughout. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I think that we sort of touched on this a little bit, but it's about our children and our grandchildren and the need for them, and we thought about this very early, to be exposed and influenced and around different things, especially the arts.
Thank you very much. After visiting schools, our guests get fan mail. Tom, a pupil, wrote Gloria, "I want to be just like you, only a boy." Jerry wrote a letter home to Todd, an adopted Korean elementary pupil, praising his art. Todd wrote back saying, "Some days I'm sad thinking that my folks gave me up. People keep worthwhile things. They give away worthless things. I was given away." Todd wrote that Jerry's letter changed his life. Thank you, Jerry and Gloria Jean, for being such fine role models and giving back to the community that celebrates you and your children.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
La 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 la.